Well, yeah, so the stuff about Judas Iscariot and Judas Thomas, also known as Doubting Thomas, Thomas the twin, the story is that they looked almost identical. And that they actually were twins.
And then there's a main character in this whole Cappy thing that's out there on Twitter. His name's Thomas, too. I can't remember the rest of his name.
When you're over there buying windows and telling people I found Mozart's window, and you come back and you jive people.
Time out for a second. Right. Paul Hagenauer, I think his name is, the guy who owns Mozart's house in not in Vienna, the other place, the place Mozart. No, it's not Vienna.
Yeah, no, it's not Vienna. It's I don't want to say Auschwitz. Anyway, go ahead. I'll remember in a minute too.
So he I've got his tweets and everything where he goes into how Thomas ripped him off for the floorboards. Are you talking about something different, or are you confusing the windows and the floorboards?
Nope. Totally different. Floorboards and windows. So Thomas did a little digging, and he found a place where he got, it was either, Thomas's fascination with Mozart over Beethoven is by far greater with Mozart, but Thomas found the windows that Mozart was looking out of. And so what he did was he made an offer to the person to buy the windows. The person didn't know why, but Thomas made him a really good deal on the windows. And then what he did is he sold those windows as the looking view of what Mozart was looking through while he created the genius that he was at a young age. Okay.
Dr. Aquino is actually in the same position, and the similarities between him and Thomas are really quite remarkable. That I think I would describe both of those men as black magicians.
Hey everybody, I'm alive.
I've known Tommy so long, and I know what he's capable of, and I know that if you engage Tommy, you end up being screwed over, losing probably everything you own. Thomas has gone after my wife, gone after my credibility, has gone after personal friends of mine. Todd and Mark lived with me, Kathy lived with me, and they were best friends with Tommy as well. They knew him long before I did. I met Mark and Todd when I was in junior high school. And Tommy was the guy that was always around, but he'd only show up for a few hours at a time. There'd be some drama or chaos behind it. But I've known him for 40 years. There are two distinctive personalities with Tommy. His father is quite an accomplished composer, pianist. He's also a licensed doctor therapist who worked for the government's arm with CIA, FBI, father is a heavy guy. Thomas was pretty open about his dad's stuff. His dad worked for the government on projects that he knew about, he couldn't even talk about it. Thomas was his father's lab rat. Thomas hates his brother. Thomas hates his father. And every single living moment of Thomas's life seemed to be spent upon how he was going to get even with Stephen, and how when somebody that's the person you love or the person you should protect, your father figure, tells you that you're no good, you're nothing, you're never going to amount to being a pianist, you're never going to be anything. But Tommy lived with that 24/7 until the time he realized he could go out that door, okay? And when he realized he could control the narrative from the hotel room, that was Tommy's freedom. Tommy never wanted to be home. Tommy was desperate to invite every person into his life over at a motel or over at his room. He didn't go to Tommy's house. There wasn't any house to go to, so to speak. It was locked, nobody home. He was full of shit. And you knew it from the minute you talked to him, and everything was about him, and there'd be no way to know then the monster that was brewing. Through the mid-'80s, there is the Wonderland murders. There is a shooting at the Topanga that I'm involved with. There is some people that were questioned by FBI, CIA, DOJ about why Thomas was renting a room in a place just a few weeks earlier by the guys who were alleged to go commit 4 murders. And Tommy was never once questioned about Howard Gottesman's murder. And if you look up Howard Gottesman, he was cut to pieces and found in a car And the people that he was dealing with a week earlier was Thomas Schoenberger, another individual I won't mention because this guy is still in business. Well, I'll put it to you this way. When Thomas comes to everybody with money, food, hotels, giving hundreds of dollars away in the early 80s, and talking about a guy named George Soros that he met, that he's working with, and all he wants him to do is like little things, go meet people, go talk to people. I didn't know who George Soros was in 1980. In my guess, Tommy's well connected, and we can get into why, because he's never in trouble. I met him at Google separately. There's a lot of things that there's no way he would be into without having somebody bring him there. RGB, the largest fence in California. He's also involved in heroin, cocaine. The underground stuff was his porno stuff and his connection with John Holmes.
Look, Eddie used to come to my fucking house to offer all kinds of crazy things to Howard and to Tommy, and neither of them lived there. But you could never find them. But the guy would show up with 2 or 3 big guys, and he'd be like, yeah, I'm trying to find Howard. It's like, yeah, well, Howard doesn't live here. Okay, well, I'm trying to find Tommy. Yeah, same thing. Tommy doesn't live here.
The connection with Howard Gottesman's father, his son was found cut up in a trunk at my house. Tommy is got motels and money. He moves out. People are murdered. Tommy never, ever gets questioned, but everybody knows where he was that night at a motel with a guy that they questioned with being involved with these murders.
This is July 1, 1981. It's 23 hours. We are at 8763 Wonderland Drive.
I moved into the a house with this woman who was a coke dealer, to put it nicely. The two of us rented this place on Wonderland together, and we moved in there, and I lived there for a couple of months, and these other characters showed up who were at the least unreputable. And then eventually, through a series of real brilliant moves, the people who were living in the house thought it'd be a good idea if they ripped off this club owner that had all this coke and heroin and money and all this stuff. The weak link in the pin here was John Holmes, who was buying dope from them, friends with this guy up on the hill, and they went and they ripped this guy up on the hill off. It went back, and John Holmes then went back up to the guy on the hill, Eddie Nash, and told him that, he was responsible. And Eddie Nash sent down his bodyguard, a bunch of other guys with a bunch of lead pipes, and they ended up bludgeoning to death everybody in the house.
There is evidence.
Street all day and all night, waiting for her to come home, to try to capture her, and berate her, tell her how she was horrible or whatever it was. This went on for years and years. Right after the nightmare, I owned that house. It was named the Nightmare because of all the things that went on there. Thomas went his way, I went my way. Many years later, I'm sitting over at Google, and in walks Thomas Schoenberger. And he introduces me to a woman. The woman is Saval Oz, Dr. Oz's assistant. We discuss some needs that she has, but I have a different company, and that company will get you the information you need. So Saval didn't need an attorney. She needed someone better or different than an attorney, so I was hired, along with another individual. And for a good year plus, I worked for her directly, recovering millions for Ruya, her daughter. Tommy ends up calling me a year later and says, I have a very interesting story for you. It involved the largest art heist in the history of California. That's the Maxwell Parrish robbery from the Edenhurst Galleries. The Edenhurst Galleries were owned by Tom, Dan, and Don. They're just great people. They just were underinsured. They didn't have the right alarm, and so the Maxwell Parish was stolen. It's still missing today. But Thomas gets a hold of me and tells me that his clients, Tom, Dan, and Don, they want to hire me to do some work for them. So I meet them through Tommy again. As this is going on, Tommy also tells me he wants me to double back to Google and introduce a woman named Linda Barrett, who's the Chia Seed woman, another amazing woman, and introduce them to Anthony at Google, who's in charge of basically buying and preparing for about, I don't know, how many hundreds of thousands of meals 3 times a day. We had just bought Motorola, they were paying. So I get introduced to them, they tell me the story, and the whole story's woven with Tommy not wanting me to tell them too much about our involvement together, but Tommy wants money from them for introducing me to them, and so they end up paying Tommy a set amount of money every month. I end up working for them for about a year and a half. In the long run, I personally, with my other associates, recovered $20 million in artwork. We got, this involves Yosemina and probably the Cabal and probably a lot of other stuff. But Thomas ends up accusing me of not paying him somehow in the middle of this. Yosemina, who is Beverly Hills Pawn Star, gets involved with Thomas. And the next thing you know, I had the Cabal make the phone calls to me in Tommy's name, and I better be careful. Threats weren't even getting to me because many years back, I went home and tried to shoot my friend Todd Sessa. I came in the home in a home invasion robbery. I had just gotten black belt at that time. I walked in, saw my friend on the ground, saw a guy with a gun. Not much you can do. Another guy came out of the corner. I took that guy's gun because he was way too close. That was way too fast then. And I shot the guy standing over my friend. When all of this gets into court, when all of this comes out, there are 2 or 3 people here. And Andy Smith, Chris Kelly, Clay Chauvinet, and Hunter Anderson. You see, Hunter Anderson is Adam West's kid. And arguably at this time, Adam West was one of the most powerful people in Hollywood. I kid you not. You may not think so, but Batman in the culture of Adam West's following was insane.
Adam West, who portrayed the show's titular hero, was not living a very family-friendly lifestyle behind the scenes. Both he and his co-star, Burt Ward, lived a life of sexual debauchery during their time on the seminal action program, both on and off the set. Adam was a beloved television actor who became famous for his iconic portrayal as Batman in the 60s. He passed away in 2017 at the age of 88. Due to the fact that their superhero costumes were limiting, the duo found they were often forced to engage in what they referred to as quickies. Adam recalled there was one night where he slept with 8 women at once. Burt was an innocent young man before joining Adam on Batman, and his co-star subsequently introduced him to what the young actor went on to describe as some of the most debaucherous activities the human mind can imagine.
Tom got threats so bad from what happened after the shooting because it turned out that Hunter Anderson was the driver. But we could never pin him, the courts could never pin him, but Chris Kelly pinned him. He was the guy I punched and knocked his eye out of his head. And Hunter Anderson, Clay Chauvinet, who I shot, and Hunter Anderson was the driver that night in his Volkswagen. We can prove every bit of it, except not enough for the cops in the VA, right? Guess who's involved at the end of the story with Hunter Anderson? Give you one guess. A guy named Thomas Schoenberger. So here I've got Thomas's hand in killings, murders. This is really weird. He's talking about Soros. He's FBI. You've got the Wonderland murders. You've got the killing of Howard Gottesman. Tommy was selling and getting pounds of coke for Howard through the Columbia. Because you got the heaviest tax in the world involved in this. So I'll tell you a story about a young guy named Howard Gottesman. Howard Gottesman's father was probably arguably the porno capital guy that you bought all your VHS tapes from to put your porno on, okay? Heavy-duty cats, heavy-duty business, all kinds of shit. Howard and I we grew weed, we smoked weed, we dealt weed, we were involved in weed. You know, that was our gig. And one day, Howard showed up at my house. I had a brand new baby, had a young girlfriend, and there's a knock at my door, and it's Howard, and he says, Rick, I'm in a shitload of trouble. I need your help right now. If you knew Howard, he was telling you the absolute truth, so I listened to him and said, I need about $30,000 right now. I mean, like, right now, do you have that? And I didn't have it at the time. And he said, here's what I can do. I've got all this weed. I'm going to leave it here. If you can sell all this tonight or tomorrow and get you back as much money as you can, I owe some Colombians for some coke, and I'm in a lot of trouble. Not my gig, not my problem, but Howard was my friend. I sold hundreds of pounds a few hours later, and I called him and I said, come get your money. He did. He came, he got his money. But he also came with more weed, and he dropped it off, and he said, look, we did something again for me really fast, because and this is when he broke down. He said, I'm not sure if I'm going to be alive tomorrow if I don't get these guys enough money like yesterday. And I kind of bitched at him, and I said, Howard, what, you bring this to my door. I don't want to deal with Colombians. I don't want to be in this trade. I never knew you were into this problem, and now you've kind of got me into it on my doorstep here. I'm getting bitched after my girlfriend. It's a nightmare, man, right? He leaves. I have another load. I sell it. I have about $30,000 more for him. I call him. He never shows up, Corey. Another days go by. I'm calling him frantically, like, this isn't like Howard. I had his money. He needed his money. We're not talking about $20 here. We're talking 30 grand. In 2 days, another 30 grand, $60,000. And about 6:05, on one of the last nights there, I was trying to reach him a couple days later, there's a knock on my door. I live on Saltillo Avenue at the time. And the reason I'm letting everybody know this is so you can fact check it. I opened my door to two really nice, good-looking, well-dressed, what I thought to be South American gentlemen. One guy asked me my name. I said, yes. Said, do you know a Howard Gottesman? I said, yes. He said, do you have anything that belongs to him, any coke? I said, I don't. He said, okay. And his friend who was behind him opened his these guys look right on Miami Vice, man. They look good and they were serious. And he opened up a little trench coat style thing. And I don't know whether it was a MAC-10 or a Vallejo or an Uzi. I'm not a gun guy. But this guy had enough threatening hanging to make me realize the next sentence he said to me, he was dead serious. And he said, okay. He handed me a card with a phone number on it. And this will be important in a minute. And he said, if you know where Howard is, you tell him to get a hold of me, you tell him I was here, and you tell him I'll be back. And they left as quickly as they showed up. I turned around and looked at my girlfriend at the time, and I said, pack the house. I went down to Parthenia, I rented a truck, I went and got a couple of the Mexican guys down there, paid them hourly. I loaded my vehicles up. I loaded my new baby up. I loaded my girlfriend up. And I moved everything between that night and the next morning to the Central California, to Morro Bay. Okay? I was scared shitless. I looked in this guy's eye. This guy was way too calm, way too cold, way too killer, way out of my league, and I didn't want anything to do with him. And he scared the shit out of me, okay, quite honestly. And I'm trying to call Howard. I'm trying to call his father. I'm trying to call his little brother. Howard can't be found. A few days later, unbeknownst to me, a car was found, allegedly at the corner of Mulholland Drive and Toronto. But technically that isn't correct because it was found in my driveway. The doctor across the street reported it, and it ended up going to a lot. The lot guys opened up the back, found a dead body cut into 4 pieces, And you can imagine who they wanted to talk to. You can just imagine that my name, the first person that was going to be brought in by the Los Angeles sheriff's detectives, whoever it was going to be, because the guy I'm dealing with, the guy that showed up, and now there's a guy dead in my driveway they find in 4 pieces. You can look this story up. Nothing's embellished. Straight up true. I'm gone, remember? A friend of mine named Bruno calls me weeks later, and he says, Rick, what the fuck? So what are you talking about? He goes, dude, there have been detectives, cops everywhere to your friends calling everybody. They're looking for your name. I mean, you're like the person they want to find for this murder. I got a note from a detective by the name of Ted Ball. Ted Ball is about, 6'9", maybe 7 feet. This is the biggest guy I've ever seen wearing a badge in my life. I got a phone call from a guy that said, if you're not down here from wherever you are in the world, I'm going to come get you. You're not going to like the way I come get you. And I said, you don't have to. I'm 3.5 hours away. I'll be to you in 3.5 hours. He said, you better be. I showed up there. Huh. You're going to be honest. You're going to tell a true story, but that's not really how you're treated, because I was immediately grabbed, arrested, thrown in the back. Everything about my rights. I was Mirandized. I was going to be arrested for a suspicion of a murder. I think I was there 4 or 6 hours, recorded, people coming in and out, people wanting to know different parts of the story. So remember that business card? Remember that card that guy gave me with the phone number on it? But I brought it with me. I explained the whole story, explained everything about Howard, explained the money, explained that I actually still had $30,000 of this money. Whatever happened at that moment, somebody in that very higher up at the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department walked in the door, and in about 5 minutes I was let go. Everything shifted from I was going to jail, like in about 10 minutes on my way to county to be booked for a murder, to Mr. Holiday, we're very sorry that you were hassled. Can we give you a lift home? I mean, it just changed. I don't know what happened. But I do know one thing. I wasn't even out of that freaking vanized apartment when my pager rang. I had a pager. We had a cell phone. And I called the number back. It was Howard's dad. Howard's dad wanted to talk to me. Howard's dad's a big dude. He's very connected, and I'd known him for years, and he wasn't kind of got to fuck. Again, someone would have come for me no matter what if I didn't go there. So I went to Calabasas up in the hills. I went to Howard's house, knocked on the door. I was grabbed. I was thrown onto a couch. Actually, I was bitten by his dog twice. I had a gun shoved into my mouth, and basically his dad looked at me and said, and he knows me well, I know him well, we've never had any issues before. This is very unique to me because I never thought I was going to be treated like this. And I'm basically on a couch with a gun in my mouth and a couple guys holding me, and I'm looking down at a guy who's just found out his son has been cut into 4 fucking pieces, and the last place he was found was at my house. I got problems. I don't have problems with the police anymore. I now have a problem with an underworld figure that he's going to blow my fucking head off. And he tells me that. Right, just impact some emotions. He tells me, if I don't give him the right answer, I won't be leaving. We'll be walking. Because my story's true. And he lets me out. And he says, and he's hurting me, I gotta understand, when this kid's dead. And he says to me, if I ever find out you never had anything to do with this, I'll come hunt you down, and I'll personally cut your fucking head off. And I'm telling you, this guy meant it, okay? My best friend was almost killed. Every position Tommy's ever put me in has been really life-threatening, man. Tommy was one of the guys that was working with Howard. I can tell you part of the story because it involves coke dealers, and it still involves coke dealers, and they're still doing their thing today. I'm not in that world, but at that time, Tommy was selling and getting pounds of coke for Howard through the Columbia. Tommy was selling and getting pounds of coke for Howard through the Columbia. I found this out years and years later through another person that told me about when Chris Kelly and Hunter Anderson at Clay Chauvinet came for the robberies. I found out Tommy had a hand in that other issue. person is Joy Miller. Joy, her name was on the list there, and Thomas was friends with Willie DeVille. And that's when he went in the room, and I don't remember which floor got shot, one person lived, but Tommy rented the room, I believe, from Joy. I'm just giving you my opinion, I'm telling you some things I know. I know he was at the hotel, and I know the comments afterwards, and then you'll watch. If you watch right after the Wonderland murders, where's Tommy? Tommy was never asked a single question by FBI, by any police officer from the Hollywood division to the LA division to the Rampart division to Reseda to you name it, not one question, okay? He was never asked a question in Howard Goddison's murder. But there's too many dots here, and I'm not a real theorist kind of guy. I mean, I think there's something wrong here. There's definitely something wrong. My friend won't sleep with his windows open. My friend won't sleep without his doors locked. He sleeps with a bow and arrow, a machete, but there isn't a day that goes by in his life from 1981, 2, and 3 that he doesn't think about the time that people we went to school with, people we knew, people we trusted, people we associated with, almost killed him. Almost killed me. And I hope everyone is dealing with him. Don't get involved. Don't get involved with him in any type of PayPal, any type of money, any type of check scams. Run. Run. Tommy would show up with new cars. He'd have, and when I say bags of cash, I don't mean $1 bills, the strip club kind of money. I mean, Tommy would show up with $3,000. He'd say, "Does anybody need anything? You guys need some food?" He'd come and buy, refrigerators full of food. He'd come and give cocaine, or he'd take people to the clubs, or he'd offering clothes, offering different tickets to places. He was your best friend, but the minute you walked out of the room, and he'd be shaking one guy's hand on the way in, and as you walked out the door, he'd be pandering to 40 people about what we could do to this guy, and look at what a loser he is, and and Thomas' lifestyle was rental room that he was never at, and he was always in a hotel. Always. You could find Tommy down in Santa Monica or West LA or Hollywood, slumming it up with, right out his door was the red light district, man. Tommy dug that. Thomas worked at 2 or 3 clothier stores. You got to remember, it's back in the 80s, so it's probably $3.95 to $5.50 an hour. I mean, you don't get $3,000 in a new car. The bottom line is, knowing him then, he had way too much money. He bragged a lot about George Soros. He bragged about Hollywood, the connections. Tommy was a thief, man. Tommy stole stuff, and that's how we got to know Eddie Mazzarella with the Starwood with the Scooters of Fence. So Tommy would always have little gifts. He'd come over to the house, giving girls jewelry. And none of it was Tommy's. It's all stolen goods. And then you come forward now, here's Tommy again. He's somehow connected enough in Google that he introduces me to a very, very influential woman. I was already dealing with something else, but I mean, this is a cross connection that I would have never guessed that somebody pops back into my life 20 some odd years later and says, hey Rick, this is Samal. Can you help her? Tommy had money. He was giving Todd money. My friend paid cash for his place. I helped him along with some funds. Tommy had coins. Tommy gave my friend Todd some coin money, along with pills, along with buying, his way in again, good little Tommy. Over the course of 79, 80, 81, and 82, 3, he moved up to San Francisco for a little time to Barrington Hall.
He did the band Turnstile. He did that. That didn't work out. They lived at Barrington Hall. I don't know if you know that.
Was he dealing drugs at Barrington Hall?
100%. And asked Todd all about it.
Did you know that it seems that Thomas actually had an Ambien addiction?
Oh, I can tell you a lot about that. Yes. So can Todd. Quaaludes, Ambien, downers. Yeah, anything downers. Xanax. He loved Xanax. Ambien is favorite. Let's see, what is that? 5-7 DUIs. God, I don't know. I'm not counting now.
tranquil sedatives because they can't sleep because of their cocaine habit, right? And stuff.
Some, you know what? I don't really know the whole story because Todd told me that he would come down and give him these crazy fucking. So I would say yes, there's probably something to do with that because Tommy would come down, trade him drugs for coins.
Now now this is interesting as well. We've got
Ambien, by the way.
Ambien. So he would trade Todd for coins. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because Ambien's a hypnotic as well. So it's an interesting choice considering his music.
This guy is so deep, my friend, into
Was he at the hotel? Was he at the hotel with the other guys in the gang?
Yes. That's exactly where he was.
You understand what I mean? You know, like the ones
I know exactly what you're talking. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's exactly where he was. There was a transvestite. There was a transvestite there too that they were fucking with, and there's a whole other story behind that too. But anyway,
wallets full, new car, always different motel, always some girls, mostly prostitutes. I don't ever remember a girlfriend, to tell you the truth, honestly. We never brought one over to our house in 20 years. Did anybody tell you who was the owner of the nightmare? We've never done heroin. I took the pills. I only did coke once for a year. I love marijuana. That's my go-to choice.
Moved, and it moved to America. And these guys are given special treatment. They're sanctioned. They can get away with a lot of crap, okay? And they're given the special position because when America finally gets the Iranian regime toppled, there's a power vacuum. And what are they going to do? This is the crowd that has the connections and contacts and is running a kind of a shadow criminal network already in Iran that will actually move in and retake the reins. It's just Shah of Iran 2.0. And the guys that are around Thomas happen to be those guys. They are the guys that will, if the Iranian regime falls, people like her uncle, who's more like her adopted father, and Bijan Kian, one of the people who he was talking to in the Pentagon, who's a personal friend. There's emails where he's referenced, everything like that.
Tommy was brought in by the highest of the highest people on a very lucky day when someone walked into the store that he was the coutier at, and he was selling clothes in North Hollywood. And on a very lucky day, walked in a billionaire, and he took a liking to Tommy. And Tommy's life changed from that day. That is the day he met George Soros.
Right.
What it is with the Soros is power.
Power.
See, power.
Okay.
When you, remember, you have to have CIs. You have to have street cred. You have to have people that can get you where you want to get to.
Yeah.
I don't care how much money you have. I don't care. You can't get into 24th and Hoover. I don't care who the fuck you are. Okay. Harpies 13 will kill you. You're not invited to that party. You can't get into Crenshaw. You can't get into the Beverly Hills. In other words, that money doesn't buy you that particular date. But if you know a guy like Thomas that you just met and he can get you the things you need and get you to places, then guess what? Then now you have it. You have a little key. You got a key. Thomas was a key. Thomas is a key.
He's the doorman.
And he's paid well. He's a concierge. He can open the doors to introduce you to some people. Thomas is very smart, though. He doesn't get in his own way. He never participates in a murder, personally. He never participates in a robbery. But you know what? He points out where they can rob.
Thank you, Dr. Spitch. It's a pleasure to be back in California, my home state, and Los Angeles, I considered my city.
My name is Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist. I've been an investigative journalist for about 25 years for daily newspapers. And in 1996, I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking. What my story showed was that the cocaine that was being sold in those neighborhoods was coming from mainly one source, and this one source was being used to finance a guerrilla war in Central America. The general idea of the CIA dealing drugs was something that the American mainstream press had never written about before, and that's why it prompted outrage among blacks, among drug reform activists, among politicians, by the CIA, by every federal agency involved in the drug war, because it showed they weren't doing their jobs, that it was a fraud.